The all-new Volkswagen Polo GTI, so the Mark 6, the sixth generation of the Polo in the most powerful version. That full review is today in Autogefühl, your number one resource for in-depth car reviews and your number one community to discuss cars with Thomas. Exterior, interior, general, everything you need to know about the Polo, then special the GTI, and of course the driving experience. That will be the focus here today. Normal street driving, countryside road, and of course the racetrack. So, in full HD, full screen and full length, let's go! Cloudy sky today, but that is a soft box for the video camera, so the car looks really good in those conditions. And for you in your living room, it's also a little bit warmer than for me at the moment. But let's cheer ourselves up with this vehicle, because the new GTI here has this red stripe all the way through. Here also the logo, then carried on over from the Volkswagen Arteon. This piece, this lengthening of the hood, so this makes the hood a little bit longer in the visual way. The front assist, the emergency brake is included, therefore also always a sensor here with a 2D Volkswagen logo. On the one hand, a 3D logo looks better. On the other hand, it's good that the sensor is hidden somewhere without having an extra box somewhere. Then of course a GTI with stronger lower bumpers and this comp style grille, and this comp style scheme will also be carried on over to other elements. It starts with halogen headlights. The LED daytime running light will still look the same. That's good. Optional then, as here equipped also with the full LED lights. And for example, Germany, a base Polo starts about 13,000 euros. A GTI, when you also put some equipment in it, will then easily double the price. Let's see what else you get for that. 4.05 or 13.3 is the total length of the new Polo in general. The GTI doesn't change that. The new MQB A0 platform is a little bit longer than the previous generation, about 8 centimeters longer. So you will have more space on the inside especially. We're soon going to take a look at that. Then the basic shape is still rather conservative. 17-inch the GTI rims start. Those ones here are the optional 18-inch. And yeah, disc brakes all the way, because above 95 horsepower for the Polo, they get the disc brakes. And of course the GTI with the new 200 horsepower engine then is of course in that very region. Also the GTI Red here with the badges, stronger lower bumper, also in the side profile, and the design line is on height of the door handles. Again, it's not so much screaming out in this small hot hatch segment. So the Polo GTI is still a car you can also visually drive in your everyday driving life and still have something very sporty available. What do you think about the design? Tell me. And also to show you a different color, whereas the first one was flash red, this one here is limestone gray. And now to the rear with the GTI badge In general, the rear looks pretty much similar to a normal Polo, but then of course we have this kind of diffuser also with the comp style in the lower part and two bigger real exhaust pipes that gives you a stronger appearance. The new taillights are also more in a tech style, so more modernly designed. But again, the styling itself is rather conservative with little sporty touch, just as GTI customers would expect. So give me your rating to the overall design of the Polo GTI in the comments. And of course, we'll also take a look at what really differentiates this car. That's the engine. So from the normal engine lineup, the 1.5 liter TSI with 150 horsepower would be the strongest one. Then exclusively for the GTI here, 2 liter displacement. Formerly that was only available for the Golf. Here now with 200 horsepower, so a couple of horsepower more than the predecessor. And Newton meters of torque, 320. The acceleration then will be 6.7 seconds, together with the DSG dual clutch transmission, 6-speed, which we have also right here. Remember, that is the one with the wet clutch, the 7-speed with the dry clutch. So they said to me that they went for the wet clutch 6-speed here because there's more torque. And later on, for all of the purist fans, there will also be the manual gearbox available. A fancy keychain for the key. Also, the keyless entry is available. And here, this is the interior, begins right here. This is the red decor, but you can also get it more subtle, for example in gray or something. Only flaw in this interior I see here, this is hard plastic at the inside of the doors for cost savings. I don't like it that much, but it's hard to find any other flaws. Fabric right here, and then the automatic window levers. Quite some storage spaces. Then here the red decor is being continued. Sporty GTI steering wheel with the GTI badge and red contrast stitches. Flat bottom. And then of course the classic GTI checkered seats here in the red checkered structure. Signature GTI fabric with also sport seats with more side support in the lower and in the upper in the shoulder area, and I can already tell you they are indeed quite comfortable. So let's get inside. This new bigger interior, well, you feel it a little bit already in the front. It feels more adult, so not exactly like a small vehicle, like a bigger small vehicle. I'm 1 m 86 or 6'1", and that leaves a lot of headroom still in the front, so it works also for tall people. And again, the sport seats are really comfortable, also work for longer trips and so on. Manual adjustment, but it works all pretty flawlessly. Here you can pump it up, y'all. But it's also not too hard to make it. And then this turning knob for the back part, and here also for the steering wheel, you can push it in, not using the horn here now in the city. Pull it back again, of course a little bit easier with two hands. But by the way, some people might wonder sometimes, hey, you're using this 80s style microphone. Is it a bad microphone? No, actually this bigger microphone is, from sound quality wise, way better than the small attachment ones. And when it's in the background here, quite loud, some cars, train, a lot of noise from the sea and so on, then actually this one here is way better for you, because you can very precisely hear me and don't have so much background noise. Interior overview. On the top part they use soft touch, by the way, on the middle part also. Then the very prominent red decor part, again you can also pick it in more subtle colors if you prefer that. 6.5 or optional 8-inch screen, the biggest one available, but you see, yeah, you see there's still a volume knob and also a knob to zoom in and out in the infotainment system. Soon more deals to this one. And digital gauges, you can still get analog ones, soon more deals to that as well. The steering wheel with the comp structure style is repeated, the design elements from the exterior, again the flat bottom steering wheel. Then the climate unit is still separate in the lower part, but you can pretty easily access it. Also seat heating is optional. In the lower part you have two USB ports and also inductive charging you can get as well. And here there's also enough room to put your smartphone. DSG shifting lever in the lower part then. Again, a manual version will also be available again if you prefer that one. And in the lower part, for example for driving mode, we explain you that in the driving part. So this is the main menu, and you can either use this app connect and then use the smartphone mirroring functions, or normal on phone and connect it via Bluetooth. Then the GPS, you can either have it, the processor is too weak actually, here the GPS or at the digital instruments. I hope at some day this will be changed. Then you see there's good responsiveness and also still a proximity sensors for the lower controls. So here, wow, there they disappear again. Overall, a very good system, and I like that I still have the knob, for example, to zoom in and out with the GPS when I'm driving, because when you're driving and then doing like this while driving, that's sometimes a little bit difficult. So I think it's overall a good solution. And then the digital gauges, they are not flickering in real life, but it's really hard to set the camera up in a way that they do not flicker. It depends on the display. Here it's hardly possible. You can change the views like this for more information, or more that you have the classic layout. Then in the middle part you can, for example, also have the GPS again, assistance and so on, and navigation. And if I want to have the map right there, so either I can do it like this here, or I do it in the central infotainment system, and then I can also make the map bigger here, full screen basically, or again with the information, or then this one would probably be my favorite view. By the way, what you can also see from a driver's perspective, here the bottle holders in the inside of the doors, they're actually really large. You can fit big bottles there, that's nice. And then the middle console lower part, well, those are the cup holders. They are rather shallow and are not adaptive, so they work for small bottles but don't really hold them tight. 12-volt power supply, and then we got here this armrest. It's pretty tight, and then you can actually put some things in it. It's more spacious than it looks. And now to the rear. Here we go. And before, in the previous generation, I could hardly fit air in the rear. Actually, I didn't really quite. And now there's the biggest change also with the new platform, the MQB A0 platform. My knees now exactly fit in here in this vehicle, and I can also put my feet under the seat. That's very important, even if the seat is in the lowest position. Again, I've set the seat in front of me to the 1.86 m or 6'1" height of me. Still have headroom left, so plenty of headroom even. So you can drive this car with 4 tall adults. Of course, if you're even taller than me, then you start to have some problems at least. And also the seating position in the rear is rather upright, so for a small vehicle is really a very comfortable position here in the rear. So overall for the new Polo, I think this is also one of the biggest strengths. I like that they have also repeated the design scheme for the rear seats, as you can see it here. And in the lower part also the ISOFIX points for the outboard seats each. Because this Polo here in general will also be quite often used for child seats. Maybe not necessarily the GTI, but who knows, maybe the small racer will like it in the rear. And some more special insight for you, and also about saving cost. What do you do with the vehicle and what don't you do? So what they do is the whole seat frame, you know, from the steel frame. They paint the whole frame, also at the lower part where you cannot see it. The reason for that is that even after a while there won't be any rust on the material. And then, for example, you don't have dirty shoes when you put your feet under the seat, which is actually possible here. That's a really good thing. They pay attention to that. However, they also search for things where they could do some cost savings, and they also did a survey of customers, for example, about the handles on the inside. So this is a very clean and basically empty inner ceiling, and there are no handles left, front and rear. And you know, some might use it when they want to hold tight inside the vehicle, but some obviously said, well, you know, it's not too important to me also when getting in and out of the car. So that one were cut out for cost savings, because of small vehicles there's a small margin of profit. And so every cent counts, basically. I would like to know from you, from the 2 points I've mentioned here, which ones would be very important to you as a customer, and where would you say, oh, you know, that doesn't matter so much. Let's open the boot. Here we go, flipping the logo. 350 liters is a basic setup. Oh wow, some fancy GTI umbrellas. Then we got the battery right here. That's very interesting. And I think optional you can also fit a replacement tire here. There's this repair set. Then we can also flip the bench from here. For example, it's a 1/3, 2/3 split. There you can see how you can load things through, and not exactly, but relatively even. And what I like in detail always, that, you know, the covering material is always pulled tight. That's not like wobbling around here. So they pay attention to that, for example. So, and what if we fit those cabin trolleys in here? How does that look like? Then you can see works like this in a setup, for example, or you can also, you know, put one like this, so that you can see the height, because then you can really know what it's like with this trunk when you get your groceries and stuff. So guys, welcome to the racetrack with the new Polo GTI. So here we can really test the performance, the dual clutch transmission, the new engine, now with more displacement, and also the steering. So let's go right here. And here also something of the sound. And the DSG is here very helpful, because I can concentrate on steering, keep my hands on the steering wheel. The differential in the front has an electronic lock, so hopefully When we accelerate out of the corners, this will also reduce the wheel spin. Let's see how that works. You see the steering is really precise. Don't have to steer that much. Up on the curbs, this car really slides out just a little bit to the side then. I mean, it's still a front-wheel drive car, but you don't feel it that much here, I have to say, when you really hammer it. And you feel it's very light and agile, so not so many G-forces are applied, like when you drive with a bigger car on the racetrack, for example. This one, by the way, the electronic warning, because when the car in front of me is getting too close, of course here on the racetrack, Benny Leuchter, by the way, famous race driver, is driving in front of me, so we know each other and we know what we're doing here on the racetrack as well. We've been here on the same racetrack also with the Golf R, for example. So 100 kilometers, 120 here almost on the small straight. It's near Palma de Mallorca, a track that is rather narrow. Would also work well for, you know, rally cars or also for motorcycles actually. Good grip from those Michelin Pilot Sport tires. So this is the only real difference then to the road cars we've been testing here today. Here we got those, you know, it's basically those semi-slick tires, if you want to call them that way. And indeed, even if I really hammer the throttle, I wanted 40 kilometers an hour, 150 now on the brakes. Great braking performance too. So I got very good grip, and indeed the electronic differential is doing here, for example, very good job. Usually when you have those front-wheel drive cars, you sometimes have problems to precisely steer them, as the front wheels somehow pulling you in the corner for understeering. And that's really not happening at all. So I think they have done a very good job to prevent this understeering effect. So at the same time I have all the control still with the precise steering. That's always the point where I get close. It's funny. And by the way, yes, it's of course a difference with the Golf R. It definitely felt faster. If you're a really true automobil fan, you would scroll back to the Golf R video on this racetrack and then compare the lap times. If someone of you wants to do that, I would be so much looking forward to that. What is the lap time difference then from the Polo GTI and the Golf R? That would be really fun. Even more important, even more interesting would be Golf GTI versus Polo GTI, by the way. And yes, here the new Polo GTI feels again more sovereign. It's a little bit wide, a little bit longer, and feels more Golf-alike than ever before, also on the racetrack. Great performance, no turbo lag, S shifting mode here that I have always a little bit more RPM. And by the way, about the suspension, we have this Sport Select suspension here. So the DCC, the Dynamic Chassis Control, which is the adaptive suspension, comes always with the Polo GTI. But then again, optional. You can go for this Sport Select, and what does this do? Well, both are the adaptive suspension, but you start with a normal sporty setup, and then with the Sport Select, you can have a little bit sportier notch too. So, and this one, now we are getting the tires screaming, but then again, I have full control all the time. That's really well done. So, and this Sport Select suspension, which is even a little bit stiffer, of course helps me to control the car here on the racetrack even a little bit better. Here it's not so much about comfort, but as you will also hear later on when we drive the car on normal city roads and motorway, you can easily use this suspension also for your everyday driving. A little screaming of the tires. I really hope you enjoy this racetrack. It's really a nice one to enjoy too, just as a driver. And again, as you have this compact size, not too much weight, you can also really enjoy it. And well, this one is done really, because most of the people buying this car will not use it on the racetrack. And that's why I'm testing it for you, that you can have something of the taste even if you don't have the chance to do that yourself. And even stay on the gas a little bit in the corner. Still got so much stability from the car, that's really astonishing. Oh, that's 150 now, wow. So if you watch in the front from the small camera, you can maybe also see the speed I am applying. You can also get a sense of the acceleration, for example. And to finish off our racetrack part, some more corners for you just to enjoy with the sound. And one more short part here for you from the racetrack, because what I wanted to test for you guys is when I put the ESC to sport, so putting back the electronic stability control, let's see how differently the car behaves then. If I can, you know, drive it even a little more agile. Where are the differences? Let's see. Maybe a little bit more tire screaming. It feels not too different so far. And I think it lets me play a little bit more with it. Get a little bit more natural racy feeling, so that the car is doing less and I'm doing more. Let's put it here now. Bottom it out. Back from the straight, now the left again. So I don't feel the biggest difference, but then again, it's something more subtle, you know? I think the car is moving a little bit more, but then again, I have more control as a race driver. And putting the floor down. That's really on the edge of grip now. I think it's good that I can control it. Of course, it's, you know, for especially for street situations or when it's wet on the road, you should always leave the ESC on. That's what the purpose is, that the car is always remaining stable. And if you have some time or some place to play around with it a little bit, yeah, it is somehow, even if I can not exactly tell the biggest difference, it is somehow a little bit more fun to drive it than here with the Sport ESC. Yeah, maybe here, if you know, when accelerating really hard, we got a little bit more tire screaming, you know, because the differential is then not working that much maybe, or you know, the stability control is not really ruling the power down, and then you have some more spin, which is here, of course, on the racetrack, no problem at all, and as I said, even a little bit more fun. So we've been very fast on the racetrack, And in this part now, we'll more pay attention to the everyday driving features like motorway and countryside road. And we're starting on the motorway. What I have to say is here on Mallorca, those motorways, they have a rather rough tarmac. So quite often when we test cars here, people say, oh my God, it's so loud in here. And that's really, depending on the surface of the tarmac. So now, for example, this part here is a little flatter, basically, not that rough in the very surface. But as soon as I switch to another surface, then you get the difference. So if you compare cars, even if you would do it on a dB meter, here now this tarmac is a little bit rougher again. You always have to take in mind what are the conditions. So, and I mean, I've driven enough cars around here as well, and I also know about the old Polo. And so what is the main factor? Well, first of all, you feel the car is a little bit larger, so it sits more sovereign on the road. It not exactly feels like driving a compact segment car, but it more tends toward that. So it's not exactly a Golf, there's still a differentiation, but the old Polo definitely was not only smaller, it also felt smaller, and that's no wonder. The new MQB A0 platform that has been used right here also brings you more stiffness, so about 25% more stiffness, and that gives you also this feeling of more stability while driving. They've also worked on the sound insulation. Again, rough tarmac here, but we're driving about 90 kilometers an hour, and I don't have to raise my voice that much. So it's overall also a good result, that's for sure. Visibility-wise, well, we have the blind spot monitor here, which is one of the most important safety features, in my opinion. More important, of course, the bigger the car gets. Here you have a very good basic visibility too. So when you look to the rear, even though the rear mirror is rather slim, you can see very well, the car still has the classic Polo shape with the upright windows. Clear visibility also through the side mirrors. So we'll stay right here. There again, the blind spot monitor, you can see it in the side mirrors when this yellow dot flashes. Also to the rear here, you have a quite good visibility again, so overall you can easily feel at home in the vehicle. So if you have never driven this car and take a seat for the very first time, you will not be overwhelmed. You just start driving and you're absolutely satisfied and get along with all the things and stuff. The seating position again is a little bit more comfortable than in the previous generations, so this one is also a little bit better as for the long-term riding comfort. That would be very important to me, especially if you're a little bit taller. But again, due to this new platform, we experienced the same in the Seat Ibiza. Due to this new platform, you also feel cozier as a tall person, especially. Those sports seats we have here, the special GTI seats, are also good. And if you compare them with the Seat Ibiza, where you have those optional FR seats, then I have to say the FR seat even offer more comfort for taller people because they're a little bit wider. So also, if you're a little bit wider yourself, then this one would help. And with the bigger seats that we experience in the Ibiza FR, the car even more feels like a compact segment car. So the normal GTI sport seats here, they still feel somewhat similar to the normal seats. Of course, you have a little bit more shoulder support and that. So at the moment we are rather running straight, so completely different than from the race trick, but again the car sits very calm on the road. We also have the normal driving mode as for the suspension at the moment. We can also test right here how the sport suspension performs on the motorway. And of course it doesn't make too much sense here, unless maybe you want to do an overtaking maneuver. When we're then running over those transverse obstacles on the road, for example, you feel different and it gets a little bit rougher. Of course, the sport mode really helped us on the racetrack to get more stability, even reduce the tilting and so on. Consumption-wise, with this new engine, with considering it's a Polo, a lot of displacement. If you drive it very calmly here, rather steady speed on the motorway, we're under 7 liters on 100 kilometers. So that is actually possible. The real consumption, however, will of course be mixed with city driving and stuff, and then it will rather go up. So 8 is surely a rather realistic figure if you have something more city riding and stuff included. So I'm going back to the normal mode again. It's more relaxing if you're just using this cruising, everyday driving. So consumption-wise, this is one of the very rare things you can criticize with this vehicle. Yes, you have the hard plastic at the inside of the doors, which we would have liked to see a little bit better. Then there was, that the active info display cannot show the big GPS map at the same time also in the instruments. And the third thing would indeed be the consumption. I think it should actually be lower. It's a sporty vehicle, yes, but it's also a light car. And we've experienced that a couple of times, that the Volkswagen AG engines in general, also with the other brands, they are very silent, very refined, very powerful. So give you a very good experience at the customer, but they consume too much fuel. We have the different things with a lot of the competitors from Japan, where the engines are sometimes, let's say, a little bit boring maybe, a little louder, don't feel as refined, but then again consume less fuel. And we cannot really judge that because we cannot do, 200,000 kilometer endurance test with each car, but we get a lot of feedback also that the Japanese engine would be also very durable. So that's it too. Even if you're in a normal driving mode, the good thing about this as a city car is you're always spontaneous in the throttle. And especially if you're, for example, in Spain or France or in Italy, you guys in Southern Europe, you really know how to use a roundabout. So in Germany, when you drive into a roundabout and you see someone from 10 kilometers, someone approaching, and you drive into the roundabout and the other one comes about 2 minutes later, the guy will still complain, hey, you went into the roundabout and you didn't pay any attention. And in Spain, France, Italy, it's just working better because, a roundabout is there that you don't leave 2 kilometers of space. Everything flows, everyone, takes mutual respect. Well, that doesn't work all the time, but the thing is, it should be allowed in a roundabout that you also enter at closer proximities, because that's the only way it keeps flowing. And for this, for example, when you see, there's a small gap, and even if you're in a normal mode, not prepared for a racing turn, you just push the throttle once, and with the GTI, you're exactly in the right spot. And that's the good thing, to have those power reserves. So if you maybe argue inside the family, I want to have the GTI, and someone says, it's too much horsepower, you could say, I'm sorry, it's for safety reasons. Some situations I need to have a little push. That's actually safer. So that's my argument, help for your buying purchase for today. And the thing is really about this vehicle, you can spice up your everyday driving life. Just a little slalom here and there, see how precise the steering wheel again reacts. Also if I'm just normally driving, also when parking in and out somewhere, the steering is precise and progressive. but at the same time light enough that you don't need so much power actually to steer it around. There is also the Eco mode available. That one will, especially if you have the DSG, help you to reduce the fuel consumption. The car more uses this coasting or sailing function. There's no resistance from the engine brake. Also the throttle input is reduced. It's not a must-have exactly, but you can play around with it. The DCC, the dynamic chassis control here, where we can pick the stuff, of course always comes with the GTI. For the normal Polo versions, you go for it optionally. On the steering wheel, we also have the controls for the assistance systems. So we have the ACC, for example, we activate it there, and then we can set the speed. And again, an optional feature, ACC, and the distance is kept to the car in front of you. It works very flawlessly, especially in the combination with the DSG, because then the speed can be reduced to 0, and that's it. With the manual engine, manual gearbox, then the car sometimes, before stalling the engine, says, use the clutch and brake the last meters on your own. I think this combination is not always that good, because when I use an electronic system, I would like to know that I can trust it 100%. It doesn't stop at any point. No matter which driving mode from DCC you are in, you can always adapt to the shifting mechanisms. On the racetrack, we use the sport mode all the time. And here I'm in the normal driving mode, and then I can just pull the lever back. And I'm in this S shifting mode, also showing me in the digital instruments. Gears are turned up higher and shifting back low earlier. However, for normal city driving, it's sometimes a little bit exaggerated. That's really, when you're on the motorway, for example, and want to plan an overtaking maneuver, then it's really helpful that there's no need for a downshift first. Actually, nice sound always from such a small car. But what you can also do, even if you're in the normal D mode, use the shifting pedals here, and then just shift back 1 or 2 gears. Then you're directly in this acceleration, and then you can also plan your overtaking maneuvers. And here, it definitely works as it used to be. We had some thing there in the Porsche 718 Boxster review. Here, when you hold the right pedal and just keep on holding it for a few seconds, then you're going back to the automatic shifting mode from the DSG again. The manual gearbox, again, so to say, as an information, will be available at a later stage, or if you're watching this video a couple of months after it has been launched, you probably also will be already able to get it then. So what is the main difference then really to the previous generation? I think it's this calmness in the ride. Even for the GTI, it is in normal mode, not as aggressive, more comfortable to ride. Still, you can pick the sports mode and can get a stiffer suspension then, and really something that is basically ready to race. When you are on normal dry surface, you also don't feel that it's front-wheel drive only. If it's wet and you really hammer it, then there can be some wheel spin. Depending on also how the differential is set, that also changes a little bit then when we're with the DCC mode, of course. And looking at the map, by the way, at the moment I have it in the big screen. And that's also the thing, when I want to change it now, it can be a little bit complicated. If I go to the GPS mode on the normal screen, I just have like an arrow, just basic arrow, which is quite okay to have something in a more schematic information. And if I would like to have the map over there, then while driving, well, there's a proximity sensor, and then I go to view. It is basically possible, here to switch the map right there. You have to look at the screen once and click it, and then I have it also in the middle of my side here. Doesn't make a big difference. Well, I'm not so sure about that. Maybe if there would be a head-up display, then it would be making a bigger difference. But here it's also, you can have it in that way, but also can make it a little bit bigger. It's also possible, or zoom in and out. So those are the possibilities you have, basically. On the right side then, again, you have the schematic information while you're driving with the GPS now, so you can at least set it how you like it best. I hope that maybe in a facelift with 2 or 3 years, when they update the processor units, then maybe also be possible to have it, in a different way. Checking the views here, you can also see something from that on our small action camera. Also can have the GPS in the whole way, so I can see it even better. And that's actually quite good for the driver then, to make it over the whole screen. Then you have very good GPS information. Still have a digital speed in the lower right corner. Or I can mix it around again, showing that also in the interior part with the more classic analog view. So I think the key finding from driving the motorway here is again calmer, more sovereign, sound installation worked on. Power-wise, always a good power reserve. So every little detail has been reworked a little bit, and most of the things we noticed are then indeed better than the previous generation. It would be bad if that would not be the case. The consumption of 7 liters on 1 kilometers when just using cruising speed is confirmed now, by the way, and again, for cruising speed with a small vehicle, that should be lower, definitely. But again, I think it shows this vehicle here that you can have a sporty, emotional vehicle, still have fun in your everyday driving life, and don't pay so extremely much money for a vehicle only to have, a sporty one. Because with this one you can still combine your city driving and also your fun driving. And what I have to say, we always make those experiences with small vehicles. At some points when you have a big family or you need to transport something very large, it's good to have a bigger car. But I always like driving the smaller cars because they relieve you also of some things. When you have a barrier in front of you, right and left, maybe a high pavement in a parking lot, then sometimes you feel a little bit stressed when you are in those very big vehicles and it gets really close on each side. Here with a Polo size, for example, you always relax, I'll get through everywhere basically, It's hardly getting any close on the right and the left. And so sometimes, going for a little bit more minimalism, for example, a little smaller car can also help you, to just to breathe a little bit. But with this vehicle, of course, when you really hammer the throttle, as we've shown you on the racetrack, I think it rather makes you breathe a little bit more. And now to our closing stages for today with pure Autogefühl on those countryside roads. We started with the racetrack, then went a little calmer for your everyday driving life. And now again to the countryside roads. We're also going uphill now, and then you can see why the S mode can make sense, because at the moment in D mode the car is going more efficiently, and then I'm in a higher gear, for example, and I can't accelerate out that fast. Now when I go to the S mode again, especially when going uphill, I got the RPMs really right. By the way, the difference to the normal Polo is really remarkable, that the steering is a little stiffer, even in the normal driving mode, for example. But you can stay with the normal suspension setup, by the way. If you say, at the moment here the roads are a little bit uneven, so the normal suspension might do better even, because then it's more comfortable for your driving. But you can say shifting-wise and power-wise, torque-wise, you want to have it sportier, and then you go just as I have it now to the S shifting mode. Then you also don't have to use the pedals all the time, but stay in the normal suspension mode. For example, here I'm better able to overtake goes faster. And again, more secure in a way because I have more time to secure my spot on the road. So, and here now you can also see the progressive input of the steering. This one here, also hairpin corners. Now the engine also has to work more. Sometimes you hear those upshifting sounds. One of you guys asked me lately this so-called DSG fart when you have those upshifting or downshifting sound. How is that actually done technically? So they do that there's a very short extra fuel injection that is like plop, you know. So this moment a little bit extra fuel is burned, then it's creating this so-called DSG fart. And well, does it have a big effect on the consumption? Actually no, because it's just a little bit. The bigger effect on the consumption is on which road you are, you know, where you're actually driving to, and of course at which speed. And those corners here, they are actually that narrow. That's really good that I have a Polo GTI, because sometimes, you know, even a Golf GTI would maybe be a little bit too big for those corners. So imagine also I would have, you know, some facing traffic or so. Sometimes can get a little bit close when it's straight, not but in those corners, and they are really 180 degrees here. And that's of course a perfect terrain. Even they're so sharp that I really have to turn around the steering wheel a lot. Here of course the DSG does a very good job. Second gear, concentrate on turning the steering wheel. Third gear just a little bit. Well, theoretically you could also stay in second gear in the manual all the time. Yeah, at the moment shifting about 4,000 RPM. Again, very agile driving. So, but when we go to the sport mode, how does that change here on the countryside roads? So now I have a little bit more feedback suspension wise, a little bit stiffer. The S mode I've already picked before. Yeah, I do definitely feel a difference when I'm going over those transverse bumps now. It's a little bit like pop, 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 pop. If I stress that now. And it also sounds like that we would have a little bit more exhaust response. That's what I mean, you know, with facing traffic. So I can't drive them too fast here, although the car would be able to. One thing, of course, about front-wheel drive sports cars, in those corners when you accelerate out and you have rear-wheel drive, you feel a little bit more agile, as you know, the rear part of the vehicle then is pushing you a little bit better into the corner. And you don't have that here with the front-wheel drive, of course. That's just how it is. But unless you're, you know, in the very extreme situations, here there's grip all the time. So the difference is not, you know, not that big. And also, if you think about, you know, drifting here, there would actually be no room to drift here without facing the other traffic coming towards you. So funny in the digital instruments, how it looks like on the map. It's like and that's exactly what we're experiencing here. And so the main thing is here that the car remains basically comfortable also in those situations. On my wish list, let's say, I think I had it also in the Ibiza. I think steering wheel wise, when I remember it correctly from the Golf GTI, that the Golf GTI gives you a little bit more progressive input in the steering wheel. That means with the Golf that you don't have to steer you know, that much as here with the Polo. So to me the steering setup from the Polo is in a way that you have to do a little bit more work. Again, it's not really hard work because it's still easy to steer. But I think there is still somewhat a difference that you have a little sportier setup than with the Golf. So especially for those rather sharp corners here. It really helps if you wouldn't have to steer that much. Then again, to other cars in this segment, it's still a relatively easy to handle car. That also became apparent here in those very funny winding corners. And now to our conclusion for today, the Volkswagen Polo GTI in the new generation. Well, first of all, the all-new Polo, well, it's a little bit bigger now. It's almost a small Golf. You especially see that you have more space in the rear compartment. It really gets close to a compact segment, also driving-wise, more sovereign feeling. The exterior styling here also with the GTI, it has the sporty elements, but it's still suitable for your everyday driving life. It's not too exaggerated, so a sporty, elegant styling. The interior, basically same accounts for that, also with the characteristic GTI note. In many different small elements, this new generation has been improved. It's not a completely different car, but you feel and see, hear and experience the smaller differences then bit by bit, and then they form a whole conclusion. Well, it is also suitable for a racetrack. We've seen that as well and was a lot of fun because it's still a small car and therefore it's also very good in the handling, and the power is of course as good or as plentiful available as we've seen never before. Well, a 2-liter engine was only available in the Golf so far, so again, this makes it maybe a small Golf, as I said earlier. Overall, there's not so much to criticize. Well, you know, the processor unit there for the GPS system, of course, then a little bit more soft touch material at the inside of the doors. Those were maybe the main criticism points, also with the consumption that should be a little bit lower. But other than that, a very convincing presentation of the Polo here, I guess. And I would like to see you also at the very next Autogrill episode. And please give me your feedback.